accessible voting, and I'll go through these briefly, and then I would love to hear from Anna with her experience in this area. But so there are a few different types of accessible voting options depending on what you need. Curbside voting, if you have limited mobility, you are eligible to vote curbside outside of your polling place. So if you arrive at the polling place, and typically there are people outside, if you can ask someone to ask a poll worker to bring a ballot out to you, or if you come with someone. So if someone is driving you and they can safely park and go in and ask for one, then a poll worker can bring you out a ballot. They will have you sign something to make sure you're still you. They'll run your ID just like they do with everyone else, and they'll bring the ballot out to you in the car. If you have physical disabilities and for some reason your polling place is not accessible as it should be, you can request a different polling place. And again, in St. Louis City or County, you can choose your polling place. But for other counties, they may be assigned one polling place. So contacting your election authority will be the most helpful option to make a request. And there's a phone number, 800 NOW VOTE is the phone number that can be used to find your local election authority. And every polling place must have an accessible voting system for individuals with disabilities. So these systems include an audio ballot to make sure you can hear your selections, or the ability to enlarge text to read the on-screen ballot. And we'll have Anna talk in a minute about what she's experienced with accessible voting. You can also request to be a permanent absentee voter. So if you have a physical disability or a disability that means that you really will not be going to vote in person at all, or it's difficult for you to do so, you can request to be placed on a designated list so that you are automatically mailed an absentee ballot. And so that will also be with your local election authority. So I want to really quick, while we have this open, turn it to Anna. And Anna, if you have any insight or any stories you can tell about your accessible voting experience, I'm sure people would love to hear that.
All right. So, for those of you who may not know, I have a disability and I use a wheelchair. And during the recent primary, I decided to have my mom drive me to my local polling place because I wanted to vote inside and in person because that what I prefer. When I arrived at the polling place, I obviously knew I needed an accessible voting machine because filling in the tiny bubble was not going to be possible with my hind motor skills. So I went up to they had a table with about 4 and I went up to them and I asked for an accessible voting machine, taking note that they did indeed have one Unity machine next to the printer. It looked like a mini travel suitcase type type machine. I don't really know how to describe it. So I knew they had one. So I went up and I asked, and they obviously they were asking they I was probably the first one to ever ask for it. Maybe ever or maybe only on that day. Um, they ran my ID and then they had to print out what appeared like a QR code that they were going to enter in the machine. What they figured out what I was asking for, they had a pull remote and had it up for me. It probably took him about 10 minutes, but honestly, I was willing to wait because voting is very important and everybody can wait. It make the time to wait is what I'm trying to tell you. What I made it over to that machine, the one thing that I did realize is that it is at a very high table. Um, that is not wheelchair height. So when I asked the poor to please help me reach it, they told me that they were unable to do that for a reason I do not know. They didn't have a reason. Maybe I was with my mom and he was able to hold my back up so that I could reach it without having to lean up. But if you want somebody in a wheelchair that might lean back, I recommend bringing a pillow from home with you or bringing a support worker, a family member, or hand. But what my mom was helping support my back so I can reach the machine, I was able to vote completely independently. So
That's
yeah, that was kind of my experience.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you talk about how it wasn't exactly perfect, it wasn't exactly without a couple little bumps, but you were able to stick it out and get what you needed from that experience. And that's a great time to bring up that one, you can bring a person with you. You can bring a family member, a friend, a staff, somebody who you know, to support you in voting. And you can also stick around and wait and make sure you get the help that you need, even if, say you're in line and you get in line before the polls close, then you should just stay in line no matter what. Make sure that you get what you need so that you can vote. So there's a lot of information on the Secretary of State's webpage. That's the official voting information for the state of Missouri. I would highly recommend going there for your basic information. They have a page about how to vote with details about accessible voting. They have a link to register to vote if you'd like to register by yourself or with someone at home using that link. They have listed the 2024 ballot measures. So those are the measures that we are voting on, we get to vote on in the state of Missouri. You can request an absentee ballot via that website. You can also check your voter registration to make sure you are registered. The MoDDC, which is where Anna works, they have amazing videos about how to use the accessible voting machines, and you can click on your county specifically and be shown information by county. So I would highly recommend checking out that website. The ARC of the US has a really nice plain language voter guide. The ARC of the US is a national org. It is the ARC. The St. Louis ARC is a smaller statewide chapter of the ARC. And they have a really excellent resource, which is a whole guide about voting. It talks about why it's important to vote, how to vote. It is not specific to Missouri and not specific to St. Louis, but I highly recommend if someone in your life or you is looking for a clear and easy to understand guide about voting, it's very helpful. And then there are a few other resources here. RevUp has some links for ways to get out your vote as a person with a disability, and links to other websites where you can find out specifics about your area. The voting and guardianship resource is from Mo Wings. It is a longer version of what I shared on the guardianship slide. And then the League of Women Voters has a lot of great information. specific to St. Louis for voters with disabilities. So those are a few links that I highly recommend checking out if you're looking for more information. And if you need assistance finding out if you're registered to vote, or if you have a specific question that's maybe private and you don't want to ask it on the Zoom webinar format, you can email advocacy@slark.org, and we'd be happy to talk you through if you have, a specific need.